Inside the heart of Cebu City, in a quiet corner of St. Mary's Hospital, the rhythmic beeping of a life support machine echoed softly through the sterile air. It was early morning, and the golden rays of the sun crept gently through the window blinds, spilling warm light across the white bedsheets where an old man lay motionless. His name was Ernesto de la Cruz, once a joyful man, a music teacher known across his small barangay for his love of the violin. But for 30 long years, he had been trapped in silence, asleep in a coma that no one thought he would ever wake from. In a small chair beside him sat Maria, his daughter, her face tired yet full of love. Every day, for as long as she could remember, she had visited her father, talking to him about her life, her family, and now about her daughter, Althea, Ernesto's granddaughter. Maria often told stories of how her father's passion for music was what kept her strong all these years. But this day was different. Today, she had brought something special, something that would change their lives forever. The door opened softly, and in stepped little Althea, holding a tiny violin almost as big as her upper body. She wore her school uniform and had a pink ribbon in her hair, her big brown eyes shining with both nervousness and hope. The nurse smiled kindly, guiding her closer to the hospital bed. Maria knelt beside her and whispered, "Anak, remember what Mama told you, play from your heart, just like Lolo taught me when I was your age." Althea nodded silently, her small hands trembling as she lifted the violin. She looked at her grandfather's still face, the man she had never seen awake but felt she had always known. "Lolo," she said softly, her voice trembling, "this song is for you. Please listen." She raised the bow and began to play. The sound of the violin filled the air, pure, fragile, yet powerful. The melody she played was Sa Yugoying Duyen, a lullaby her mother had sung to her since she was a baby. Each note carried love, longing, and hope. The soft tone of the strings seemed to wrap around the room like a gentle embrace. Even the nurses who passed by stopped to listen, their eyes misty. The music wasn't perfect, a few off notes here and there, but it had something even more beautiful, emotion. Maria clasped her hands tightly, tears streaming down her face as memories of her father teaching her music flooded back. She remembered the warmth of his voice, the laughter that used to echo in their small home before the accident. For 30 years, that laughter had been replaced by silence, broken only by the hum of machines. But today, that silence was filled with her daughter's music, the same violin Ernesto had once played. As the final notes lingered in the air, something unexpected happened. Althea felt the bow slip slightly as she noticed movement, a faint twitch from her grandfather's fingers. Her heart skipped a beat. "Mama," she cried, her voice shaking. Maria looked up in disbelief. She leaned closer, her eyes wide. The nurse rushed over, watching as Ernesto's eyelids fluttered ever so slightly. The monitor beeped faster, responding to the sudden change in his pulse. "Keep playing," the nurse urged in a trembling voice. "Don't stop." Althea, now crying, lifted the bow again and played with all her strength, her tears falling on the violin. The music grew more emotional, more desperate. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. And then, for the first time in 3 decades, Ernesto's fingers moved again, his lips twitching as if he were trying to speak. Maria gasped, clutching his hand. "Papa? Papa, it's me, Maria," she whispered. The old man's eyes opened just a little, and though weak, there was life in them, a spark that had been asleep for so long. Althea stopped playing and stared, her small voice trembling as she said, "Lolo?" A single tear rolled down Ernesto's cheek. He looked at his granddaughter and whispered faintly, "Music, my angel." At that moment, time seemed to stop. Maria sobbed uncontrollably, hugging her daughter tightly. The doctor rushed in, stunned by what he saw, a man who had been unresponsive for 30 years now showing clear signs of life. It was nothing short of a miracle. In that small hospital room in Cebu City, love, music, and faith came together to wake a sleeping soul. And for the first time in 30 years, Ernesto de la Cruz's family had something they thought they had lost forever: hope. The news of Lolo Ernesto's awakening spread through Cebu City like wildfire. Nurses cried tears of joy, doctors couldn't believe what they witnessed, and people from all over the hospital rushed toward room 305 to see the man who had defied science. Maria held her father's hand, trembling with emotion, as Althea stood quietly by the bed, still clutching her violin. Her cheeks were wet with tears, but she couldn't stop smiling. "Mama," she whispered, "Lolo heard me." Maria nodded, her heart overflowing. "Yes, Anak. He did. Your music brought him back." Ernesto blinked slowly, his lips dry, his voice faint but filled with love. "Maria, is that you?" he whispered, his words broken yet clear enough for everyone to understand. The sound of his voice after 30 years felt like a blessing. Maria fell to her knees beside the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. "Yes, Papa. It's me. We're here, we never left you." She kissed his hand again and again, afraid to let go, afraid it was just a dream. The doctor adjusted the oxygen mask and stared at the monitor in disbelief. "His brain activity is rising," he murmured. "This shouldn't even be possible." But there it was, clear signs of life, of consciousness, of a soul returning home. The nurse beside him began to cry quietly, saying, "It's a miracle. It's really a miracle." Ernesto's eyes slowly shifted toward the little girl standing beside his bed. He smiled weakly, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening as if rediscovering joy itself. "Who are you, little one?" he asked in a trembling voice. Althea stepped closer, placing her small hand on his arm. "I'm Althea, your granddaughter," she said softly. "I played for you." His eyes filled with tears. "Granddaughter," he repeated in wonder. "You play the violin?" She nodded proudly. "Mama told me you used to play. I learned so I could make you hear music again." The old man's lips curved into the faintest smile, and his hand, weak but determined, reached out and touched her face. "Music saved me," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You saved me, Althea." Maria watched them, completely overwhelmed, as the nurse quietly filmed the moment on her phone, not for fame, but because something this pure needed to be remembered. The hospital corridor outside filled with murmurs as the staff and patients gathered, whispering about the miracle man of Cebu. People peeked through the glass window, covering their mouths in awe. By evening, the story had already gone viral across the Philippines. News anchors spoke emotionally about the 8-year-old girl whose music woke her grandfather from a 30-year coma. On social media, thousands shared the video, tagging it with captions like, "Faith, music, and miracles do exist," and "the power of love in its purest form." Back in the hospital, Maria and Althea stayed by Ernesto's side. The doctor said his recovery would take time, but the hardest part was already over. He had come back to them. That night, as the city lights twinkled outside and the air smelled faintly of rain, Althea took out her violin again. Ernesto. Weeks later, the incredible story of Lolo Ernesto and little Althea had reached far beyond Cebu City. News networks from across the Philippines called it the miracle of music. Reporters visited the hospital, and doctors still shook their heads in disbelief, unable to explain what had happened. But to Maria and Althea, there was no mystery, only faith, love, and the magic of a granddaughter's violin. One afternoon, a producer from America's Got Talent contacted the Dela Cruz family. They had seen the viral video of Althea playing Sa Yugoying Duyen, and the miraculous moment her grandfather opened his eyes. They invited her to appear on the show as a special guest, to share her story and perform the song that moved the world. Maria hesitated at first. Althea was only 8, but Ernesto insisted with a faint smile. "Let her go," he said. "The world should hear the sound that woke my soul." 2 months later, under the glittering lights of the AGT stage in Los Angeles, little Althea stood nervously, clutching her small violin. The crowd fell silent as the host introduced her. "From Cebu City, Philippines, please welcome the girl whose music brought her grandfather back to life." The audience gasped in amazement. When she started to play, the familiar melody of Sa Yugoying Duyen filled the vast theater. The gentle tune floated through the air, echoing softly, almost sacredly. The camera caught Simon Cowell's face. His eyes glistened, his expression unusually soft. When she finished, there was a long pause before the entire hall erupted in applause, with many standing and wiping their tears. Simon leaned forward, his voice trembling slightly as he spoke. "Althea," he said gently, "I've seen thousands of performances on this stage, but this is something beyond talent. This is the soul of music. You didn't just play the violin, you played with your heart, and you brought your grandfather back to life." The audience cheered again, chanting her name, "Althea. Althea." He continued, "You reminded us all why we love music, because it can heal, it can connect generations, and it can make miracles happen." He looked at her with genuine admiration and said softly, "You are the reason this show exists, to share stories that give the world hope." Tears streamed down Althea's face as she smiled shyly, clutching her violin. On the big screen behind her, they showed a video message from Lolo Ernesto, still recovering back in Cebu. He said, "Althea, my angel, you made the world hear the song that saved me. I am proud of you, and I love you." The audience gasped again, many crying openly. As the music swelled and the crowd clapped in rhythm, Simon stood up and pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down from above as Althea covered her face, overwhelmed with emotion. Simon walked up to her on stage, knelt, and whispered, "Your story will spread a smile across the world." Back in Cebu, Ernesto watched the live show on a small hospital television, tears in his eyes, smiling wider than he had in 30 years. The world had seen their story, not just of a miracle, but of the unbreakable bond between a granddaughter and her grandfather, a love so pure that it woke a sleeping soul. And as the camera faded out, Simon's voice echoed over the applause. "This isn't just a story about music. It's a story about love, and love always finds a way to wake the heart."